Well, hey, welcome to the podcast. Alan Briggs, great to be with you today. And thank you for hanging out with me for just a little bit to talk about not just leadership, but something I'm excited to dig into, which is we think about time, but we need to think about energy. We're going to talk about energy today. And before we get into talking about this, what I think super important topic on the real currency of leadership is energy. We're going to get there. First, just want to do a little backstory on Alan Briggs. And I met Alan a number of years ago through a mutual friend, Dave Ferguson, who randomly you just ran into in the airport. Like, how cool is
It
that?
was not it was not an accident. Got to see Dave yesterday. Full circle.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, he's the GOAT in many ways. So you and I have been friends now for a number of years. You are the author of 5 books. And one of the books that you wrote, I've referenced, yeah, I think over the last 2 episodes, which is this book right here, Anti-Burnout. Would love for you guys to order all of Alan's books, but this one is very connected to what we're going to talk about today on energy. And your newest book is The Sabbatical Journey. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, which is I would argue more of a field guide to walk through sabbatical than just this. And I would even say this is more of a coaching experience than a book, but we got to package it somehow. Neither here nor there.
So Alan just came into here to Mission Church. I lead a church here in the suburbs of Chicago, and Alan came in and coached up, equipped our staff here at Mission on something called the Working Genius. And as he was doing that, I was sitting there just receiving such gold, and I just had an incredible time. I also thought, I'm like, man, I need to see if you'll hop on the podcast because there's a number of leaders out there that need to hear about this conversation of the real currency in leadership. It isn't just time. Of course, time matters, but we need to be thinking about energy. And so I'd love for us to dive in to the conversation today. Alan, thanks for giving us some time. H2 Leadership, amazing organization that you lead and are a part of. And when did you first start thinking about this whole thing of we got to think about energy? We got to think about energy.
Yeah, I've been coaching leaders for about 13 years now. Yeah, coming up on 13 years.
Wow.
Many of those years didn't know what I was doing and was doing it intuitively. And then it crossed the line, John, of moving from this shift I call from intuitive to intentional, of creating tools, creating processes and pathways for leaders. And I started to see the burnout epidemic like
Mm,
crazy in every field, every sector, working with leaders, didn't matter, nonprofit, for profit, running their own thing, working for somebody else. And the question I was asking is, what is not working about the way we're working? Something is off. And what's leading to this? We've gone upstream for the last decade, really on burnout. And so again,
mm,
this is really what I've found from leaders across fields over the last decade. And so it's been really freeing even to like get it out of my head because I realize there's so
mm,
much bubbling around in my head and in my gut. And to get that out to the world and actually to lead leaders through this shift, the main shift of the 7 that we're talking about today is this shift from time management to energy investment. And I started to realize the really wise leaders, as I was coaching about 5 years ago, the ones that were really making it, quote unquote, the ones that were H2 stands for health and high impact. So they were healthy and they were high impact leaders who had both of those, living well in the tension, understood they were running on the operating system of energy, not time, and they weren't just throwing time at problems. And that's when we really started to see clarity on this. Again, one of the core shifts I'm leading leaders through. So that was 5 years ago, and I would
mm.
say it only increased with technology usage, AI, and actually, I think there's some exciting things around
Yeah.
AI with not even just energy, but with time. So yeah, man, I love talking about this, but more
Mhm.
than that, I actually love seeing leaders shift on an axis
Mm.
about this and kind of open the door to a different way of living. It's really freeing, John.
Yeah, you said a phrase I wanna love to understand a little more, burnout epidemic. Really? Is there really
Yeah.
an tell me about that.
Yeah, it's below the surface, it's not in your face. And burnout's a spectrum. So I mean, there are
Oh,
people who
okay.
can't function. There are people who I would say are just under living their lives, and that's where you'll see everywhere. They're underliving their life. They're underliving their giftings. Um, Even if we talk about purpose and vocation, those deep words, you can't go there without the enough energy to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's such a killer to
Mm,
be living on lower energy is because leaders are paid to make decisions, which means
mm,
that we need wise thinking to go through that. That inherently requires creativity. And if we don't have energy for those things, then we are ultimately going to be living in doer mode, not developer mode. We are going to be, running on what we've done in the past, not creating new things, new futures.
mm,
And so I believe it's a necessary competency of leaders is wise decision making. And obviously, we could talk about burnout all day long, but massive deal. Hard sometimes to know who's
mm.
burned out because you often don't know until it's too late. And so I think we have so many people running around with burnout who don't even know it. So, weird analogy, pardon this, but they say that 60 million Americans have parasites and don't even know it. And I would say it's really similar for burnout, is to be like, well, how does one know if you have burnout maybe until you get there? Or how would you know that you had a serious parasite issue until like something is completely wrong with your body? And so it's just kind of sucking enough of our energy away. Sorry for the gross analogy, but I think it fits here.
And then, so let's go into, so the real currency, energy, not time. And I think that's a phrase that you said
Hmm.
to our
Yep.
team a couple days ago, and it really grabbed my attention because, admittedly, Alan, I think about time all the time.
Hmm. Yeah.
And obviously, I know what you're not saying. You're not saying, hey, just you don't need to think about, time
The time
management. I know
doesn't
that's,
matter at all. Or, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I know you're not saying that, but it just really grabbed my attention because I think for so many of us leaders, we only think about time. We're not thinking about energy. Let's use this as a segue into a tool that you came across a number of years ago by one of your friends, Pat Lencioni. So take us into that and the working genius. Would love for you to kind of, what's the backstory and how you got connected with Pat and that tool.
Yeah, I mean that tool has changed my life, changed teams. I get to be with teams like Mission and just watch scales fall off of our eyes and go, oh my goodness, this is why. And like even just beyond work in marriage, and to go, oh, this is why I resist
Mm,
this, or this is why um, I love doing this thing and my wife doesn't. And it's just so helpful. So instead of thinking about personality assessment as skills or gifts that we have, he thinks about it and they think about it at the table group in terms of energy and fulfillment. So energy while you're doing it, fulfillment after you've done it. So, what is your best day at work? What's your worst day at work? Well, it's connected to your working geniuses, and it's been really helpful to name those. So, I don't want to go into like the details of all of it, but the moment that I took it and saw the results, I immediately went, "This is an anti-burnout tool, and this would
mm,
be amazing to steward this and take this to leaders." On our team, we kind of have a whole working genius division because it's been such a, quote
mm,
unquote, a big seller going in with teams. I require every leader that I coach to take it because if we're just trying to think about leveraging the things in our lives, you can't leverage what you haven't named. And once we name these things, just to go like galvanizing, for example, we both
mm.
have that and I have a duty to galvanize things, but I also have a weakness in over galvanizing things because when I have a hammer, everything's a nail. And so we can fall in that, but the essence of leadership is tension. And the tension between, man, I am gifted, wired up to this, I get energy and fulfillment, but I can only do this when this is actually helpful to the org. And this is not
Mhm,
for me to go around with a hammer just popping nails where I want them to be. This is actually saying only in service to the mission, the organization, the people that I serve. And then I mean, I feel the divine flow coming through me when I'm doing that thing.
mm.
Don't know why God wired me up that way, but at some point, we've got to clarify those things, leverage them. We can only do that through naming them. So yes, it's an assessment. Highly encourage you to go take it. But more than that, highly encourage you with your executive team to start stacking
Mhm.
hands, realizing this is why this team map is the way that it is, and figuring out the anomaly that is us.
Yeah, it was really neat how you team mapped our staff. We have you know, currently 21 full-time employees at Mission, and you heard me talk to our staff. We are way understaffed. And we are on a mission to be at about 35 full-time employees within the next year. That would help us be appropriately staffed right now for our size. and but
Yeah.
you took the 21 and you created this map, which was really interesting and really kind of helped us see where we're at. So again, if for those of you leading teams out there, reach out to Alan, bring him in to do Working Genius. It was fantastic. In that, let's talk just a few more minutes about Working Genius. You shared with us, hey, here's how it works. It's really all about energy. You're either you're in the green, the yellow, or the red, and the green is what your genius is. And you have a couple of those, and then the middle is all right. This is your working competence.
Hmm.
You have competency to do it. A lot of times you kind of have to do it, probably part of your job. And then the red is working frustration. And those are the things that when you're doing them, it's so depleting, it's so exhausting. And so when I was thinking about those three, how as you're working with other leaders, are you finding that part of the reason for a lack of energy resulting in burnout are some of them or a lot of them spending a lot of their time in the working frustration bucket, or what are you
Yeah.
seeing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So working frustrations in red, those things just drain you quickly, but your working competencies drain you slowly. So my theory that I think lines up, I'll tell you in a couple years, John. I think we can actually burn out easier in our working competencies
Hmm,
than we can in our working frustrations because we know that they're frustrations. If people around us half know us, they know that I'm not built for the details. That's not something that's fun to me, and they're going to try to get the details off of my plate. But the working competencies, we're actually good at them and we see some results in them. And yet there's a little bit, it's like a hairline fracture in the bucket and the water's just leaking out.
hmm,
And they don't know that. And so I think that's the powerful thing about this. Just because you can do these things doesn't mean that they bring you energy and fulfillment. This is why it matters hugely to burnout, to the energy conversation, because it requires energy to think deeply, to solve problems, to create the future. We're moving really fast right now. We're doing what I call adaptive leadership all the time, which is why coaching is so stinking helpful because you need
hmm,
somebody from an outside perspective. This becomes that outside perspective where I can go, okay, does this require discernment here or does this require galvanizing right here? That's a big question for me because
hmm,
if that coaching client desires ongoing discernment, eventually my bucket is going to be dry. If they want ongoing galvanizing, where we invent new things, one of my working geniuses, and then we galvanize those new things into the staff, then I have constant energy for that. But
hmm.
otherwise, I actually have to stop and go, I don't think I can serve them well if 6 months in, that's all they want from me is more discernment. So it's hard, man. It's not you, it's me, I promise.
and you, there's a phrase that you were using that your best day is somebody else's worst day. Talk
And the
about that for a
opposite.
second. Yeah.
The opposite is true. I could say to somebody, tell me about your best day at work. And they describe it. I'm like, that sounds awful. Well, but if we look at their working geniuses, I'm like, actually, we need to work together because the
Mm,
same task, I want to do these things on the task and then I want to delegate it to somebody else. And they're so excited when I delegate it because then they can take it from here. And
yeah.
so I've actually staffed my team up around these things. It's been a game changer for us because we can't change hard wiring. And we need to realize that.
Mm,
I think leaders, we can do a little bit of inspiration or a lot of inspiration and maybe see things shift for 6 months, 8 months, maybe as much as 12 months. But eventually, people are going to come back to their default settings. And that has been just a huge learning curve for me. One of the ways I've had to mature as a leader is just to go like, at first, they're going to do the thing and they may be so inspired by me or by the mission or by being on a healthy team that they want to do it. But eventually, we do what we are wired up to do, and energy is going to flow into those places and spaces. So that's why I think it's helpful to evaluate folks before they're even hired, as they're hired. And then the first time we see an energy leak or some exhaustion, instead of say you're doing too much or you're doing it wrong, we actually need
mm,
to ask, what are you doing compared to how you're wired? And this has been true for me in exhausting seasons. It wasn't that I was doing too much. I like doing a lot. Like we're built to do a lot. I think we think about CrossFit or we think about lifting, like our body is built to carry a load and do heavy work. Can I get an amen? And to run
amen.
long races. But when something is off in terms of alignment, like if my hip were off and I was running 20-mile run, that thing's going to wear down over time. It
Mm.
isn't about the 20 miles, it's about the lack of alignment. And that's what I see with teams.
So coach me up real quick. Let's do a live coaching session. I you have more than 10,000 hours in this, so I'm not worried about me throwing this on you in an instant right now. So coach me up. You know what my working genius is, and I've shared enough with you at times on when I'm just like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
leaky bucket. Alan,
Mm-hmm.
help a brother out, man. So coach me up.
Remind me of your frustrations again.
All right. So my frustrations all the way down at the red would be around enablement
Mm-hmm.
and discernment. No, no, no,
Enablement.
no, 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 no. Discernment, tenacity are my working
Mm-hmm.
competencies.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder. So enablement and
Mm-hmm.
wonder are my working frustration.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah. Okay.
and you know what my working genius is.
Yeah.
Same as
So,
same as yours. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Invention and galvanizing. So, what that says is with invention, that you need to be in the business of creating solutions with a lot of your energy. And you need to have time and space that you carve out regularly that I'm going to go create solutions to things. And a lot of coaching is that. So a lot of your work with unfinished probably
Mm-hmm.
does that, creating some things from scratch as well. And then galvanizing. That's really about movement, about knowing that you're rallying people together and that things are actually moving. So for me, I would much rather go around traffic and take 10 more minutes than go straight through traffic, even if it takes more time, right? And that is true in leadership. That's true in life for me. And so galvanizers are big on speed. And so both of those things, just who you are, and you need to have regular time and space to be able to
Mm-hmm.
see those. So if you look back, John, I would guess some of the most exhausting seasons for you are when nobody was asking you to create from scratch and you just had to run the play for 6, 8, 12 months. And secondly, you weren't feeling like you were pushing the ball down the field. There wasn't any movement happening. Does that resonate?
That resonates. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just know that. I mean, anybody with invention, you need time out of the ordinary to go, whether it's teaching prep, whether it's fresh podcast ideas that you've got, a leadership tool that you're going to bring. That actually fuels you. That's a great use of your energy. And then you're going to invest that energy into the team. When we move down to the reds, really avoiding the reds, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the interesting thing about the competencies is that those things you're good at, John, and you're going to be
Mm,
called that tenacity piece. That's a competency. You're
mm,
good at it. Too much of that, and you go, "Why am I so tired here?" And nobody else
mm.
knows that you're good at that, or sorry, that drains you, but they know you're good at it. Whereas the reds,
Wow.
ooh, everybody's just kinda like, "Yep, that's not who John is." And that enablement piece is
Mm,
take somebody to aisle 17. Like, go with them, and that goes against the galvanizing piece in so many ways because 'cause you're just
mm.
empowered, more apostolic, just go, just do the thing, and then tell me later. And they're like, "What thing? How? What details?" And so that whole thing for so many people is going to be perceived as a non-supportive leader, a lack of support. You talk about high challenge, high support. You're going to be on the high challenge side and
Mm,
just naturally on the low support side. And so just figuring out how do we mitigate those things? You're not going to fix them, but how do we mitigate those? Um, and so I think one of the questions, John, would be like, what is one activity that if you're doing that in the course of the day, you can just feel your energy going down? Give me that activity.
sermon prep.
Okay.
So,
So we've got to
now
go.
obviously, I'm guessing most people watching, listening to this podcast don't have a sermon that they're writing every week to then share with folks. But that's my life, and
Mhm,
that's of course there's times where it's deeply meaningful, and but I'm up communicating anywhere from 35 to 40 weekends out of the year. So
mhm,
um, and when I get up there, obviously I'm going to be prepared, and
mhm.
I'm not going to wing it.
Yeah.
But man, the sitting in my office, uh, trying to focus, trying to take everything that I'm learning around, if whatever I'm studying,
Mhm,
and now I got to turn this into something. Yeah, so that obviously there's a competency there, but that's a leaky bucket, and then
mhm.
I got to
Yeah.
get it over the goal line, right? So I got to send my I got to send my slides in, my manuscript. I manuscript it all out. I got to send that in to my team, and they're really flexible. Thank God, Alex Bryjack, if you're listening, she's a gem. But my life works best when my manuscript is sent in by 5 p.m. on Thursday.
Mhm.
It works even better if it's sent in by Wednesday by
Mm,
5 p.m. And that just frees me up to just. But yeah,
yep.
that's a little bit of a window into
Yeah.
my
Okay.
working competency, but leaky bucket.
So if we were having a coaching call right now, and just everybody else you can listen in on our call, then I would go, "Hey, I just want to remind you, we're complex beings, John. There's your motivation. So from the Enneagram is for freedom, and so the
Hmm.
reality is sevens structure is actually a superpower, but one that most sevens never discover or uncover. And so when you have those things, you don't have to burn off the energy going, man, let's say you moved it back a day. Say, what would have to be true to get this done at Tuesday at noon every week? Well, your whole week's going to have to change. Time's going to shift around the energy piece and you're going to see different results. And then you can look and go, what are those results down the line? So what's your motivation in that? Also, you're an experiential learner at some level, a kinesthetic learner at some level. So all these things, there's this cocktail of things that comes together to form that drink, which is us. And so it's not as simple as just boom, follow this play. The question I like to ask as a coaching question, and anyone listening, watching, apply this to yourself. What would have to be true in order to blank? And in this case, let's fill that in with what would have to be true, John, in order for teaching prep to actually be an exciting adventure?
Mm.
Poke at that. Give me a couple thoughts.
Okay. I'd have to be outside,
Okay,
moving,
great.
and somehow this. I think you're one of the few people that I think actually understand me. Um, Somehow, like whenever I sit down and start doing this, and obviously I type so much every week, but
Mhm.
that's just like, oh. So if I didn't have to sit down and slow down to do this, that this is me typing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, those are a few
So
things that come to mind.
notice this. Slow down, you're a galvanizer,
Hmm.
and slowing down goes against the nature of who you are. Um, you like movement, that's been huge for you, freedom, seeing new ideas, and even inventing your way forward. So I would say if you just cloister yourself in an office somewhere, we're not going to get the best out of you. So that actually may not be good for you or for those that you're bringing that message to. So what would have to be true in doing that differently? And comes from a guy, I've written a lot of books, which means I've spent so many hours sitting down and I've experimented, found different ways to be able to do it. The tools we have right now are crazy. To be able to speak into our phone, to be able to use AI tools, dictation software. I mean, honestly, probably a third of this book was spoken, not
Hmm.
written.
No
And
kidding.
whenever there's a story, whenever there's something, it's just it's boom, it's spoken in like really, really quickly to this, and then I let it sit for later. So, John, I would invite you to think about those three phases of ideation, activation, and implementation, and ask, how can we as a team take these on together? And your team may be Claude when it gets to the implementation. Hey, organize
Okay.
these thoughts in a way that makes sense based on my delivery style, feed some other sermons in, those kind of things. So we've got these tools we didn't have even 5 years ago, which is
Hmm.
crazy. You have a team around you. And so for you, you're going to live in the ideation phase. That's where you're going to do really well. You're going to also do well in the activation phase. You're just going to struggle in the implementation piece of that. So then it's like, man, well, how maybe the last 20%, John, of your sermon is costing you 80% of the energy.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay. Hmm.
So then so back to return on energy. What's your best ROE? Well, it's probably a concept, an idea here at the top end. So what if you could walk those three phases? Maybe the sermon that's 3 weeks out, you need to be in ideation phase. The sermon that's 2 weeks out, you need to be in activation phase. And then you never even go into implementation phase or you only touch it just by percentages. Because I just know for me, That's the most exhausting piece
Mhm.
of it at the end,
Mhm.
and so I just need to mitigate it and put only a little bit of energy there. So, to shift over on energy for a second, just to go, "Man, the time of day matters a lot." I've got a list of some mistakes I can read that I just jotted down today that I see leaders making around this, and we make them ourselves. So, I give you permission, John, to think through this differently
Mm.
because it's not sustainable if every single week, 35 to 40 a year, you have this, "Oh, man, this thing's coming for me." The other piece is I would say, how do you repurpose that sermon? How do you reimagine afterwards what we're going to use it for? Because that's one of the biggest mistakes that either keynote speakers or pastors make is to give a talk and then push it aside and not use it again. And just to go, the
Mm.
invention side of your brain to go, okay, how do we take this and repurpose it for other people in other places, for these folks to go deeper on it? Because you know
Mm.
as well as I do, one talk and then push it aside, that gets discouraging, right? Like,
Mm.
I think they were asleep in the second row, and so I'm not really sure that they remember any of it. So that would be another one to go, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a book that's coming out of that. Maybe there's a video series that's coming out of that. Maybe
Mm.
there's something that you're going to send over to other leaders in other places that are going to take that series and repurpose it. Man, that to me feels like that would be a great return on the energy that you put into that versus, oh, here's the money we just spend. So the shift, John, is from time management to energy investment. If you manage your time around your sermons for the next 20 years, you're going to be exhausted by the whole process. But if you go, man, how do I invest my best energy to do this the way that I'm wired and still, like what would have to be true, and still give enough to my team and still see the results be what we need and what we desire? Boom, we change the game by changing the equation.
Hey, let's finish up with this. Ephesians chapter 2. There's a number of folks that will listen to this, have no idea what I'm talking about. There is a book unlike any other book, in my opinion, called the Bible. And one of the books within that book is in the New Testament called Ephesians. And there is a verse, Ephesians 2:10, that I know means a whole lot to you, Alan. And I would just love for you to finish up with just a encouragement to our folks listening today around Ephesians 2:10 and how that connects to this conviction you hold that everyone's a genius.
Yeah. We are God's workmanship, his poem, his handiwork, his craft, and the care that goes into that, you can imagine. We're created in Christ Jesus to do good work, which God has prepared in advance for us to do. That's my life verse. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing all week long if I wasn't fueled by that. And let me throw an audible on this. In terms of the energy piece, let me give just a couple of mistakes that we make
Mm.
around this, because if I truly believe that I'm his workmanship, then I have to believe I wasn't created on accident and that we
Mm.
actually get to be co-designers with God. We are created on purpose. We are designed with a purpose. And so for me to go against that is actually bad stewardship. That's
Mm.
actually ineffectiveness, and it hurts me and it hurts everybody else because I don't bring that into the world. So think about like some mistakes that I've made and other people make around energy, not considering the ROE of opportunities of, oh yeah, I'll say yes to this thing. I'm giving a talk tonight. And initially I just was like, yeah, go. Well, it turns out there's more involved in it than I thought, right? You're showing up early, you're doing this, give me the media package, all that kind of stuff. So we don't consider the ROE and we wonder why we're leaking. Throwing time solutions at energy problems. We could do a whole episode on that. Not
Mm.
developing processes that actually protect our energy on a regular basis. I.e., can we pre-make decisions so we don't have to get up and make the same ones every day? Not developing leaders around us who can actually live within their genius and their energy flow is completely different from ours. I absolutely love team. I'm a team guy. Discounting activities because they don't take much time. So, how can they really be that effective? Well, some of the best 5 and 10 minute activities are actually the best investment of energy. Almost everything we do with meetings is absolutely backwards and broken. We do a whole episode on that. I'm doing a whole podcast interview with a gal around that. And then the last one is we don't find the time or energy to do the things that give us the most energy, ironically. If you know that
Mm.
working out gives you the most energy, well, I don't have time to work out. you don't have the time to not work out. You can't afford to not to. And just to realize that this doesn't make sense. You're going to have to move to a different operating system to work off of energy. My 2 minutes in a cold shower this morning, which I do every day, it somehow fuels most of my morning.
Wow.
Um, whether it's a cup of coffee, time in prayer, a walk, um, a great conversation with a friend, a meal. These are all things that don't make sense to us. Why did I get that much energy from a
Mm,
relatively small amount of time? And it's going to require us to live on a different operating system. So I know some of your minds are messed with during this time, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I'm an agitator. And we're gonna, like, sort of stir up reality here, for you because the way we work is not working, and we
mm,
have to change. You wanna see the same results, we'll do what you've always been doing. You wanna see a different life full of freedom, full of purpose, full of some, actual gusto on the other side, like, waking up believing that today can be different than yesterday, hope, optimism, freedom. We absolutely have to change how we're doing things. That's gonna take some time. So I know we're dropping a lot on folks today, John, but I'm crazy passionate because I see there's freedom and effectiveness on the other side of this.
Man, this was such a gift. Thank you so much for being on this. Last question: how can people get connected with you and your work? I know there's a number of folks that are going to listen to this episode. They're like, I need to contact that guy. I need to bring that guy in to help my team or myself. How can people get connected with you and your work?
Yeah, just Google H2 leadership. H2 leadership. Everything we do is about that intersection, that tension between healthy and high impact leadership. I think it's easy to do one, and I think it's incredibly hard to do both, but it's a battle that's worth fighting. So, H2 leadership anywhere on the Googles online.
Awesome, Alan. Thanks so much, brother. We'll be in touch, and that's all we have for this episode. We'll see you guys next month.